Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Push Project podcast. I'm very excited because we're going to do something a little different this time. And the guests that I have on today, I wanted them on, and you're going to find out why I wanted them on. I consider myself a fun guy. I can be funny. I joke around, but it doesn't translate often the way that it does for these two women on their podcast. I'm a fan of their podcast, the Ladies Lounge podcast, because they just know how to make you laugh while they're talking about really serious stuff, right? Sometimes you're like, damn, that's actually kind of harsh topic, right? Sad, but they just know how to deliver it in a way that makes you feel okay about talking about it. Angie and Carmen from the Ladies Lounge podcast, thank you so much for being on this episode. And I also want to say that this is going to be a two-part episode, with the first part being here on my podcast. And then I'm going to be a guest on your podcast a little later, and we're going to kind of continue on some of the topics we talked about here, plus I guess some listeners' questions that you may have, or some of the questions we aren't able to get to this episode. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. I would love for my listeners to know more about you individually, and then how the two of you came to begin this podcast, the Ladies Lounge.
I guess I'll start. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. First time, by the way, we get to actually star in someone else's podcast. So thank you for having us. Like you, we were also very excited to be on your show, but just because Angie is really your homegirl, and she's the one that has told me about you and has expressed to me about your podcast, about who you are. And so really, this is my first time I actually get to really know more about you, and also she kind of is throwing me in the bus a little bit, because she's like, I'm gonna put you in test run for a therapist, because I told her I want a therapist, and she's like the specialist, you know what I'm saying? So we're excited, honestly. I don't know what questions you may have had for us, or you're gonna have for us, but the one thing I love is to just roll with it. So if you give it to me,
we'll ease in gently.
I'm gonna give you what's on my mind.
Hey guys, thank you. First off, David, thank you so much for having us. I know this was like an emergency call, like, hey, my homegirl, she's ready to come on. And, I've been to therapy before, and I know it's a scary experience, but like you said, with our show, we try to cover some real topics, but in a light way, in a lighthearted way. Right. I think that, Carmen and I, we both have gone through very similar situations in our lives where you almost have to laugh in order to stop yourself from crying sometimes. Like you have to laugh at this stuff sometimes, because you're like, dang, I, of course, after the fact, during the trials and tribulations, obviously you go through the emotions, but as we've gone through our experiences in life, and now that we've gotten to a point in our lives where we're comfortable sharing this with an audience, which, by the way, when we first started the podcast, me and Carmen, we've known each other for 10 years. So we've seen each other go through some stuff like baby daddy drama, breakups, mostly me, just toxic situations, and, just watching each other grow over the years. We were like, hey, I think it's time, we share this with people, not just because we felt it was time, but we knew that we could help other people heal in the process of, sharing our stories. So that's basically how we created the Ladies Lounge. And, we're just grateful that you get our humor, because honestly, we go kind of hard on guys sometimes on our podcast. And the fact that you can get it and you can laugh with us, because, it like I said, sometimes we have to laugh at our pain. Right. So, so it's amazing to have gentlemen who can listen to us and not judge us too hard, and just kind of, go with it. And, we're just glad to be on your show, because I'll be honest, I've been listening to your podcast, and each episode is just mind blowing, right? Every guest is so intelligent. It's filled with so much wealth of knowledge that I literally had to tell myself, all right, girl, be on your best behavior today.
And she kind of warned me too. I was like, wait, what are we getting into? She's like, no, I just want you to know, tone it down a little bit. And I'm just like, okay, now I'm scared. But yeah, she did mention some good things. For instance, I didn't know that when it came to your show, is like a serious thing. So then I do get a little intimidated when it comes to serious things. And I think that's why Angie and I click so well when it comes to talking about serious topics, because we try to find the humor in things. And like she said, we've dealt with some stuff that is pretty serious. And the one thing we can do is look back and kind of laugh at the fact that like we really went through that, you know what I'm saying? And be able to like move forward. But the one reason why we wanted to make the podcast was because our friendship was just like, really the podcast is an extension of our friendship, which is like, we go through these experiences, we talk about it, we just don't talk about it publicly. So this was our way of getting people to hear, like, you're not alone if you've been through a breakup, you're not alone if you're taking a couple L's, if you've been betrayed, like we've all been through these things. Now, how do we learn from it? You know what I'm saying? How do we make every situation a learning situation? And I think that's what we, what our goal is. And that's for both men and women. We welcome men and women, but we also, I'm not gonna lie, we get a little excited when we get men like you who find interest in our podcast, because the goal is for men to listen to us and hear that these are the problems that women deal with. These are the situations that women go through, and how you can make it better, or how can you address the situation if you've been through that. So thank you.
I love it. So I'm going to start. The first thing I'm going to say in response is, I don't want y'all to be anything but yourself. I didn't ask y'all to be on this podcast.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the case.
Me listening to your podcast, the Lady Sounds podcast, first of all, I need the women to show up and have a presence on this podcast. I have a string of men guests already, and it's getting to the point where I'm like, man, I really don't want people to think that this podcast is only going to be men. My first guest was a woman, amazing guest. She brought a lot of wisdom and energy, and I loved it. And the response was awesome. And then it was just fellas for 6 more episodes. I need women on here. I need the female perspective on things like relationship and life. I don't want you to be anything but who you are on your podcast. So there's that, right? And then the other thing is, men deserve it sometimes. We absolutely deserve the fire that women, shoot our way, because we make some dumb decisions sometimes, and we absolutely hurt women left and right. You know what I'm saying? Even just going back to my own childhood, my father not being the best husband to my mom. It started very, very early. Me learning from him and my mom, I didn't want to be like him. So as far back as I started and was exposed to that, I realized I didn't want to hurt any woman the way that my dad hurt my mom, right? Fast forward to now, at the same time, I want to know other perspectives. I want to hear you ladies, other people, because it's like information on life. If I'm only listening to people that I agree with and their perspectives, I'm not getting a well-balanced view of the world, right? So I think I was telling Angie yesterday, maybe it was, I was listening to the most recent episode of your podcast. Amazing, by the way. And I was talking back to y'all. I was actually jumping in and responding as if I was on the show with you. And I'm like, no, but this. And I'm like, yeah, but the way that you guys were, the way that you're throwing jabs at, all the fellas like Future, and it's like Tristan Thompson right now, and Carmela, which is like the newest, I think, of the drama, just the heartbreakers. This is why we have to have these conversations. Men and women need to be able to have these kind of conversations. I'm not just a therapist. I'm a man first, right? Who just happens to be comfortable talking about feelings, who happens to be comfortable listening to folks and saying, oh, you know what? You're right. You have been through a lot of stuff. Let's talk. Let's chop it up, right? So I appreciate you just being exactly who you are. No pressure, honestly. So Angie, I don't know what you said. Like, yo, we need to be on our best behavior. No, see, that's not what I want. I want y'all to just be you. So this is just really exciting. And I also wanted to say too, I know Angie because we used to work together at a radio station, Accelerated Radio, which is an online studio that I run. Shameless plug for, if you're looking for a home for your podcast, check out Accelerated Radio. Angie had her own show on there, and I was helping running the studio and things like that. And Carmen, I was aware of you. I had heard of you when you were on the air here in LA, because I'm also in radio here. And I remember Carmen on the air, I believe. I just didn't
Oh,
remember
dope.
where I heard
Yeah.
it, right? So then when I saw the two of you start your own podcast, I'm like, yo, it makes sense. And then as I listen to more and more
That's dope.
episodes, one of the things I love so much about you two, you know how to carry a conversation. You absolutely do. And in your episode, you definitely have your topics you're ready to talk about. You have your thoughts on it. You have your follow-up points. And I just love the way that you're organized and you go for it. So
Thank
ladies,
you.
gentlemen, you need to check out their podcast, and it's going to be fun doing this one. We got some questions planned. You had some questions for me. I have some questions to kind of start off with you, and then we're going to free flow because I know you said, I think that Carmen, you had started more recently thinking about, hey, maybe I will go check out a therapist or find out what that's like,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So some of the
Yes.
questions you sent me were about, hey, what is this? What is this about therapy? What does this mean? Or so we're going to get into it for sure. So let's start off with one of the ones that was the most pressing for me was, how in the world are you able to be so candid, vulnerable, raw, and funny at the same time, talking about some of the painful experiences, the heartbreak and, the baby daddy issues? And how are you able to do that? I know we touched on it a little bit.
Angie, go ahead.
So like I said, we have learned to laugh through our pain, and
Mhm.
this is something that's I think very hard for most people to talk about is whatever situation, the co-parenting. In my case, I met my daughter's dad when I was 17. We got married when I was 18, very, very young. I was with him for 10 years off and on. And, there was a lot of trauma there that was created through that experience. So, I finally decided to leave when my daughter was 6. And, she's actually about to be 16 tomorrow. So, it's crazy to think like it's been 10 years since my divorce. But if you think about it, like, that's a long time, but I'm just now ready to open up and talk about it. So, it takes time to be able to, again, not just, process these things. Obviously, therapy has helped me a lot, but it's been a lot of inner work because I had to even face myself like, okay, Angie, you were no angel in this situation. How did you play into the situation? And how toxic were you and how petty were you in these situations? Because we talked about my love for pettiness and how witty I am and how quick I am to want to, like, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you back. Whether it be with words, whether it be with actions, like that's something I had to check myself in doing. And not just in that relationship, but honestly, everything I went through with him carried on from the next relationship to the next relationship. And I have seen this pattern in my life that I just got to, like, I literally got tired of my own ish. I was like, you know what, girl, like you really need to get it together. So I just felt like I really wanted to just, be honest about it and be open about it. And the fact that people can actually relate and can actually like laugh with us makes me feel good, because I'm like, all right, at least they can, find some humor in it just the way we do. But it's also really touching to get messages from people where they're like, hey, like what you said really helped me get out of my own situation. Or, what you said made me realize I didn't treat that woman right and I should, make things right with her. That's when we're like, hey girl, we're saving some relationships out here. We feel good about it. So, I guess that's a long-winded answer to say, like,
Perfect.
we have gone through, so much. And like I said, with Carmen, I've seen her go through her own situations where, you want to save your friend, but you also know, like, you just have to kind of let people go through their own stuff and still, love them through it. And because we've been that for each other, now we're able to be like, girl, do you remember when, and then just laugh about it.
Yeah. Very
Love it.
similar to that with me, with Angie, what she, just to elaborate a little bit of what she said about, like, being able to find humor in the situations that we've been put through. But I think with me, it started off very young because of man, stemming back from with my mother, honestly, my mother has a mouthpiece on her, and my mom has been through so much. I mean, she's never met her father, so she's had daddy issues her whole life. My dad, obviously, great father to us. I love him, but you know, the relationship with my mother was never perfect, and far from that, you know, but we did, and to this day, they still continue to be together. But my mom has dealt with a lot that, and seeing her go through certain things and still being, I mean, Angie knows my mom, still being the funny, crazy lady that you would never think she's endured some stuff. And so to me, I think growing up, it's not like I would try to mimic that, but it was in me to find the humor in things. And with Mexicans, I don't know if this happens to, if you guys have dealt with this, but with Mexicans, like we make fun of each other all the time. And I feel like my family, my siblings, my tias, they all gave me tough skin. You know what I'm saying? To be able to handle certain things. So it's like, if you're going to make fun of me, I'm gonna make fun of myself before you make fun of me. And so when I got into radio, then that's what I think made me realize that I like making people feel good. Like I like taking the focus off me and making it about like something else, you know? And so with other people, like the one thing I always get is like, oh, how are you always so cheery and so happy? If I can make someone else feel better, even if I'm making fun of myself, if I'm making fun of something I went through, I enjoy that. Like I get a kick out of finding that people are having fun listening to me and not worrying about what the issues that they're currently dealing with. So if I've talked about my being played. I've literally played out the whole scenario of how I got cheated on, had my ex-boyfriend on. It was so toxic. Like when I tell you I was raw on radio, I was 100% raw to the point where it even caused my relationship at some point. But that helped me grow throughout. And I've told this before, how like it wasn't easy, you know, when people are telling you, girl, you stupid, you still with that? Like you still dealing with, you had a child with that man after he did that. And instead of me being like, or covering up like, yeah, but you know, it is what it is. Nah, I was more like, yeah, it is me. I was dumb and I did do that, but look where I'm at now, you know? So it was hard. I think my one thing is fake it till you make it. And so to me, if I could laugh at myself, laugh at my pain, and then also let's talk about you now. Let's talk about how you can improve and make yourself better. I feel like I think that's what makes it great. Even makes the show great. You know, the fact that we can laugh at that or talk about it and kind of break the ice a little bit without being so serious. And trust me, even while we're laughing, we're also crying inside.
It hurts a little.
Yeah. And sometimes then tears come out later too. Yeah. You ever cried at some point and then you look in the mirror and then you kind of laugh a little bit? That's kind of how it is with the podcast. Like we're crying inside, but it's funny. You know what I'm saying? Like, girl, you done went through that. Yeah.
There's some internal strength there though you have to have in order to be able to find some humor even in the pain. You know what I mean? There is just something there. And I'm glad to hear that, you know, Carmen, you said your mom kind of role modeled that humor even in very hard times, because, you know, you begin to see how resilient kids are. So we absorb it growing up. Yes. We see whatever our parents do and we still absorb even the good stuff, you know, and we get the examples of, oh, okay. So it's tough, but it's not the end of the world. Now, I heard one of you say your mom had a mouthpiece. Was that you, Carmen? My mom was a 4'11" little Filipina firecracker.
Oh, yeah. So I feel like Filipino short moms are equivalent to Mexican moms. I promise you. Same. God they just speak different languages.
Yeah. She's going to be listening to this episode at some point. So Mom, I love you. And I think, thank God you're not as fiery as you were back then.
You should melt down a little bit.
But you know, because my mom, she didn't play. She was from, you know, she was from a part of San Diego that was, you know, you had to be tough. You had to be rough around the edges. So she knew how to make sure to be street savvy and all that stuff. But she's grown and matured. And so I love it. As you were talking, both of you, you were giving your responses. I also was kind of reviewing some of the titles of your episodes. And I wanted to read a couple of them just to give people an idea of some of the topics you talk about, just to say, hey, this is what we go for, right? So the most recent episode, he fumbled the bag. And you're talking about a lot of dudes, that celebrity guys who've kind of cheated on the women, and time again, a woman goes back to these dudes, but it seems like the men get praised a little for, you know, being players and being dogs, and the women get thrown under the bus. How to catch a cheater. So that's actually the one I was listening to. But mom life and miscarriages, so we get a little serious there. But, you know, let's talk about dating while being a mother. The only
I
OnlyFans.
laughed because that episode actually got us in trouble, and
Did it?
Yeah. So the backstory to that is I was in this like brief relationship with a guy who had a kid, and long story short, when we broke up, he obviously knew, Carmen's my ride or die. So he had her phone number, and for whatever reason, after he listened to that episode, he felt attacked, and he, texted her. Yeah, he texted her and told her all kinds of stuff about us. And I was like, first of all, if there's things that I didn't even mention to my closest friend, it was really to protect you and, to make sure she didn't have this like ill, feeling towards you. But hey, you just told on yourself and you literally made yourself look like an ass. So yeah, but that's just to show like after that, it really made me feel like, shoot, should I talk about this stuff? Like, but at the same time, I just said, hey, let it record and we'll just talk about what we need to talk about. And if it hurts your feelings, well, guess what? Like it is what it is. So
yeah, he played himself.
If he didn't do you dirty in the past, it wouldn't have been painful for him to get, you wouldn't have had to talk about it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
if the shoe fits, I'm just
saying. Put it on.
That's what happened to him, because the thing is, like, we never mention names, and we try to shy away from that too. We try not to mention names for the safety of others. And when I say safety, I mean you never know what ex of whose ex is listening, and you know what I'm saying. And so we understand that not everybody is down with having their situations in the spotlight, which is why we try to protect other people. But when it comes to us and our situations, we're going to speak freely of it. And that's even to say, like, with her ex, if he felt some type of way and would have kept it to himself, he would have never, like, nobody would have known what ex it was. If it was a recent one, if it was a long time ago one, but he told on himself. And this is why I don't want to have any more of Angie's numbers, ex's numbers, because they feel they can hit me up. So the thing was, it just so happened that he had my number over something that was like, I forgot what we were doing, somewhere where we had to exchange numbers.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why he was able to contact me. But I almost was like, who are you? Because the thing is, like, once you did my friend dirty, like, I don't need to hear anything else. And I think he was trying to do is save face. He was trying to make or let it be known that he wasn't in the wrong, but he obviously told more than he should have, because Angie didn't even release some of that information. So in the next episode, we sure did release that information. That was his fault.
You exposed yourself, sir.
Yeah,
right. But you know what? That's the beauty of our friendship too, is where we trust each other enough where I'm like, yeah, you can have his number. Like I let them talk whatever outside of me in the conversation, because we have that level of trust with each other where we're, we don't question that. But, but back to like these kinds of episodes, some of this stuff like can get us in trouble. But at the same time, like Carmen said, we're not here to really shame anybody else. We're just here to share our story. We're just here speaking our truth. Exactly. And, there's always like two sides to a story, and then there's the truth. So and we do have an episode where one of my exes actually comes on. So it's not like we shy away from, someone else, the other side telling their story. Hey, by all means, if you want to be a part of the show, like, go ahead. But
welcome.
Yeah. So
because you're not going to hold any punches, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is basically our therapy session, and everybody gets to hear it, So
yes, that's what it is. That's really how you describe the episodes that we do when they're serious like that and they're about us. When it's about other people, like the celebrity world and stuff, I think what we try to do is find the human side of it, because people think that celebrities are like these robots that don't exist or aliens and not real people. And it's like, we try to humanize them, like, hey, you guys know these people are human, and also we've been there, or also let's not make the same mistakes these people are making, and also be able to love yourself the way J-Lo loves herself. Just saying.
You know what, I'm glad you brought that up too. So speaking of J-Lo, speaking of Carmelo Anthony and Tristan Thompson and Khloe Kardashian, that's kind of the three celebrity couples that you talked about in your most recent episode. This was one of the things I was legit responding to y'all in those conversations, because I was like, no, but wait, this, but that. So on one hand, I just want to kind of, because folks need to go back and listen to the episode and you'll get the
Yes.
context of what I'm referring to here. So on one hand, you have J-Lo breaking up with Alex Rodriguez. We know now in more recent news, she's back dating Ben Affleck, right? If you follow any Hollywood news, you know what's going on.
Jennifer.
And Bennifer, there we go. Right. And so for the two of you, you were like, you know what, good for her. She's doing what she wants. This was the love that got away, this, that, the other. And it was kind of like a kudos to you for going back to, if that's the one you love and your heart always wanted that, kudos to you. And then it transitioned into Khloe Kardashian and Tristan Thompson. And it's like, girl, like you saw the patterns. Why did you keep going back to that if you already knew the patterns, this, the patterns, that? So, and I think Carmelo and Lala, very similar, honestly. I mean, I know that they've been married, they have kids together, but it was this, on one hand, it was like, good for you, girl, going back to that, repeating the pattern of your past. And then on the other hand, you're like, girl, you saw the pattern. Why are you repeating it? Right. And so I was like, I was sitting there like, so how does this work? And it brought up the questions like, if it's the homie, if it's the two of you talking to each other and you say, girl, he's not good for you. You already know how he was, how he did you in the past. That's not a good look. Or you already see the red flags. Don't do it, girl. I love you. Don't do it. Right. We're saying legit, avoid doing the same thing as before.
Right.
But for some couples, we're like, oh, our heart and good for her. Go do it. But the truth of the matter is, J-Lo is repeating the pattern.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
She's repeating this, literally repeating the relationship cycle. Next thing you know, she might be back with Diddy after Ben Affleck doesn't work.
Nah, don't play my girl like that. Listen, she is repeating what you're saying is the repeating the pattern of what everyone is assuming, like, man, there she goes. She breaks up with one and moves on to the next quick, right? That's what the pattern is. Well, I feel with this situation is a little bit different because yes, she's moved on, but this is someone she's familiar with. And also you got to remember, they didn't break up because he cheated. They didn't break up because he played her. They didn't break up because he humiliated her. This is a situation where they had to go their separate ways because they thought that's what was best for them at the moment, So I think if it was something different, like her going back to someone who had played her, then the reaction wouldn't be the same. And maybe Angie and I would have had a different conversation. Like, man, she's doing the same thing, that everyone is saying. It's true. She's repeating the pattern, but this is a different case. And that's the reason why we clap for it, because we're like, if this is what you want, girl, at the end of the day, your recent just played you. So you could move left and right if you wanted to and fuck what everybody says, or I'm not sure if I can curse, but F what everybody says, you know what I'm saying? Now I'm getting serious over here. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, come on.
But that's why I think it's a little bit different. And again, it's not to make an excuse or because I think you're making it seem like, you guys why is it okay for her and not everybody else? But that's really the reason. In my opinion, I feel like that's why we are clapping. And that's why you see so many women and it's like, hey, do you boo boo? It's because she's going back to someone who didn't hurt her. It's because she's going back to someone who she wants to try to rekindle things. And we see so far it's good. Again, if there was different, if there was red flags before, if he had played her before, if there was a moment where we thought, man, J-Lo, you're falling into the trap of like going back to the old D, then it's different. But in this case, I feel like it's someone who didn't play her and they could have picked up right where they left off.
Yeah. If I just want to add to that.
Go ahead.
So basically, I'm for it because she's not adding mileage. Let's just keep it real. She's just going back to somebody she used to be with.
Part.
I'm for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it too. But I will say, as a serial dater who's, I've gone through that pattern too, where I go from one guy to the next, or I go back to the old guy or whatever it is. And I never really gave myself time alone. And this is something that I've noticed with J-Lo is I love me some J-Lo, but girl, give it a rest a little bit, just un poquito, and only because I'm speaking from experience. I've gone from relationship to relationship, never gave myself a break. So after the whole, this situation with this guy that ended up calling Carmen, I was like, I'm done dating for a while. Like, this is embarrassing. I don't want, and now that we were really like putting ourselves out there, I wanted to be more cautious of who I'm getting involved with,
Yeah.
So I actually haven't been doing much dating. I'll like meet a guy and then I'll be like, and then I'll hit the, running the other way as soon as I start seeing, certain things. And this is something that I'm proud of myself about, because it's taken a lot of growth for me to be able to be strong enough to leave situations before it gets too deep. And, that's where I feel like I can relate to J-Lo with the going back to, Ben, because he's familiar, because she probably feels safe with him, because she feels like he never played her that, to her knowledge. And again, it's what I like to call the throwback D. She's just going back to the throwback D, and she's, and she's good with it. So we're applauding it because she's doing, she's taking one for the toxic team. Like, women can be toxic too, and we can do, things that, probably wouldn't make our parents proud at the end of the day, but we're doing what's best for us. And I think that that's what I applaud her for doing. Is like, all right, girl, just do whatever makes you happy. At the end of the day, we'll see what happens. Because in the last episode, I said how in my experiences, I've noticed that when I go back to an ex, it always ends up either the same or worse. So for me personally, it hasn't worked out. But for her, who knows, it might.
Yeah.
And you said it correctly too. I mean, she's a grown woman. She can do whatever she wants.
Right.
In the clinical space, one of the things that we pay attention to all the time is just patterns. So patterns of behavior. People always ask, why this? Why do I do this? Why does this happen? And you begin to try to create a timeline, right? I mean, we can trace it back to childhood trauma, choice in relationship, whatever it may be. And you just try to string a timeline together and look for patterns and things like that and see what comes up. Now, people can make whatever decisions they want. You're absolutely right. 110%. There's this other thing going on too, of this mentality of getting over the ex with the next, regardless of it's whether it's somebody that you've been with or not.
Yes.
Right. What we call that is, in order to get over somebody, you got to get under somebody.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. And the only reason why I tell Angie this, it sounds like I'm encouraging her ratchetness, but I've been there, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And to me, and we always make sure to tell people on our show, it's like, we're no experts. We're not professionals in this, but this is what worked for me to be able. And I also want to clarify that it's not the right way. It's not the healthy way, but it just worked for us at the moment. And I feel like with J-Lo, you see all these stories that are being told about her. I mean, think about it. The stories of Alex possibly talking to a girl on FaceTime yes, and
Ben
then
Affleck's ex or something like that.
And now Ben Affleck's ex, like all those things. But even while she was engaged to Alex, the rumor was that he played her, and that's why they broke up in the first place. And that's why he was quick to run to Miami and be like, baby, let me make it work. You know what I'm saying? I think that's why, I know it's important to know the content, because
this is great.
The context of it.
Yeah. I think for me, watching this, stuff go back and forth between like J-Lo and A-Rod and Ben Affleck and then his ex, like, honestly, I'm just grabbing my popcorn and I'm like, ooh, like, because it's a lot of pettiness going on. At the end of the day, it's a lot of pettiness. And like I said, I'm here for it. We all have our toxic ways. I just happen to be upfront about mine. I let guys know from the jump, I am very petty, baby. Like, welcome to Pettyville. I am the queen of petty, and it's something I'm still working on. It
depends on when you catch Angie, because sometimes she'll be like, I just read the Bible, and you know what? I ain't even going to go there. And then you get the other Angie that's like, you know what? I just PMS and I don't give a damn about anybody right now. Yeah. So it just depends.
It's called balance.
You got one on one shoulder and the other one on the other shoulder, and they're both talking to you.
I'm a Libra. I'm a Libra, baby. So I am all about balance for sure.
And Lena and I had a conversation a while back too, and I had mentioned that on the other side of petty is the healing, right?
Yes.
We've all done it before. I'm no different than anybody else. We've all done it before. So I want to kind of broaden it out, the conversation a little bit on the same topic too. But why do we then, if we still have strong feelings for somebody, why don't we do what it takes to try to make it work instead of moving on to somebody else and, and try to make that thing work when we know our heart is really with somebody else? Because after Ben
Yeah.
Affleck, sometime after that, J-Lo went and got married with, what's the
Mark
artist?
Anthony.
Mark Anthony, and they had some kids together, right? But if
Yeah.
her heart was with this other guy all along, why do we do that? Why not just, you know what? We love each other. This is like, I don't want to regret us not working out.
Right.
Why don't we try to make those things work even better? Why don't we try harder?
Honestly, if I can answer this, I
Yeah,
feel
come on.
like a lot of the times it's ego. I think and I'm speaking for myself, but I feel like
Sure.
for most women too, we want our ex or our love to come look for us and show us that they're going to do the right thing and come knocking on my door and tell me that you are sorry and that you're going to be better. But 9 times out of 10 that doesn't happen. And so what has to happen, or at least we feel like has to happen, is we got to move on from that. Like, you know what, obviously I love you more than you love me, because you should have been knocking on my door, when really we should have had that conversation. We should have put the egos aside and been like, all right, listen, I know that you're not a good communicator. So I'm here before I move on and before I cut you out of my life. I want to know, are you wanting to give us a try? And if so, what are you going to do to change it? Instead, we're more like, F you. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to move on because he ain't knocking on my door. We're looking at our phones all the time. Like, he ain't even thinking.
Right.
I'm
He ain't even
looking
thinking
out my
about me.
window. I'm looking out my window looking for
Right.
mariachi. Like, is the mariachi out there? Like, what's going on?
So I think that's what it is. At the end of the day, it's our egos for both men and women. With us, we want we want a man to be able to do things without us having to ask you to do things. And so once we get to the point where we're reaching out to you and being like, hey, I'm about to move on. I'm about to let you go. I'm about to cut you. And if I cut you, that's it. Are you sure? You know what I'm saying?
I ain't giving no warning. I ain't giving no warning. I'm going to tell you right now. I've been that one that's been like, I'm too prideful. I'll be honest.
And that's what it is. Pride. That's why that's why we end up moving on, because we're too prideful to be able to put our feelings aside and address it before moving on.
Yep. No, I've blocked them on my phone, on my social media, on my email. And I'm like, why didn't they send a letter? Why did he not think to send a letter? He had my address. He should have sent me flowers,
Well, Angie, that doesn't always work. That doesn't always work because remember, I blocked my baby daddy. I'm not going to say which one, but I blocked my baby daddy from everything. Like, literally, there was no way he could get a hold of me, right? And mind you, I do radio, so I'm easy to find if he really needed to.
Yeah, you're a public figure. Yep.
Right. So I blocked him from everything. And then I was like, once I realized, like, man, I'm easy to get a hold of. If he really wanted to, he could find me, but he never did. And it wasn't until he started reaching out to my emails. And that's the only thing I didn't block. And that's because I didn't have email communication with him. It was, text messages. It was calls. It was social media. It was never emails. So when that came around, and then I was like, oh, again, it clicked to me that he was like, oh, wow, he's really trying to make this work. And wow, like, he's really reaching out to me. So this is it. And that's when I made the mistake of, oh, he's actually trying. Let me give it a try, because my love obviously was still there. So I'm like, all right, let's give it a try. Clearly it didn't work. I mean, one child later, it didn't work. But again, that's what happened. Had most of the exes, Angie's exes, or guys that we have dated, if they would have put their egos aside and reached out and say, hey, you know what? I know I messed up. Let me try and make it work. 9 times out of 10, most women, we're soft and we're emotional. We want to make it work. You know what I'm saying? So we would give it a try. But unfortunately, most men are all either they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So they don't even care to make it work, or they don't find the love strong enough to reach out to you. And that's why we don't go back, you know?
Okay. So I heard something and I was like, yeah, this is kind of what men complain about women all the time. Essentially, you want us to be mind readers, right? You want us to just
like, why didn't you
so
know what I was
do.
thinking? Why didn't you go and reach out to my friend so she could tell you what I was thinking?
Gotcha.
High school shit.
Yeah.
Well,
it
listen.
definitely is.
This is kind of segueing really nice in some of these questions as well too. Carmen, you had the question of, why do most men lie or feel the need to lie about unnecessary things, even though they're not doing anything wrong? Little white lies for no reason.
For no reason.
Some of the experiences.
For no damn reason.
talk to me about some of those experiences you've had that even inspired that question.
I would say every man has done that. Every man that I've dealt with has done that, down to the man I'm dating now. I've been with him for 9 years now, and it would be small lies. And I've had these conversations with him after the big fights, of course. Like, why? And okay, let me see if I can think of an example. Let's see.
I'll give you an example. No, I'm joking.
I was gonna say, do you have one?
Angie's ready.
I'm saying that he does. It's so funny because we know each other, you know, so well. Where I could be like, "Girl, remember when he?"
So it would just be like lies that make no sense. Like, I mean, this isn't one that he did. This is one that another ex did, but he would say, like, all his messages would be cleared out, and I would say, "Why do you delete all your messages?" And and he would say things like, "Oh, you know, I just need room in my phone." And I've had this discussion with like a guy friend of mine, and I'm like, what do you think? Do you think he's hiding something? He's like, okay, I'll be honest with you. Yes, probably hiding something, but he's like, I got OCD, so I delete all my stuff anyways. He's like, so maybe there is a reason that he's doing it, and it's his OCD. So I was like mind effed, you know. I was like, so wait, is he lying to me or not? But those little white lies. And it turns out that he didn't, and he wasn't cheating, he wasn't doing anything, and it was just him, you know, cleaning out his things. But because I have been in relationships where I've been lied or betrayed, that just was a red flag for me. And to me, I'm just like, why lie? I don't know. It's just dumb little things like that. And my man does it all the time. It'll just be things like, why didn't you call me? And it was like, oh, I fell asleep. And it's like, no, you were playing video game. Just say that. You were playing video games or something like that, you know? And I asked him, like, why do you lie about things? He's like, honestly, the truth is, and this is what he's told me, but I mean, I gotta believe it because I'm still with him, right? But he'll say like, I honestly lied because I don't want to deal with that argument, because I already know you don't like me playing video games, so I'd rather just tell you something else. And I'm like, well, that's worse, because now like you're lying to me for things that make no sense. Like it's not like you're cheating on me. And so now there's potential for me to think that maybe you are doing something you shouldn't do, when really you were just playing video game. And his excuse was he just doesn't want to argue about something we've already argued before.
Right.
Is that valid?
I had a similar experience where he was clearing out his text messages, and I was like, why are you doing this? And same stupid excuse. Oh, you know, I ain't got too much, you know, I don't want that on my phone, blah, blah, blah. So here's toxic Angie back at it again. So I went and checked my phone bill and was like, I found the number that he was texting back and forth, and I called the number.
You did your research.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, when the FBI needs to hire me, because I can run the whole show and I can show them exactly how to find stuff, where to find it, how to do it. Yeah. So
he was lying about something big though.
Oh yeah. This is the girl he ended up having a son with. So, you know, while we were married. So
that wasn't even a white lie though, but that was a legit lie. Like he literally lied about something he was doing.
But that's but you know, that's to what you're saying. Like, even if it is the truth, it does make you think, well, what are you really doing? You know, like if men don't realize this, but if you were to communicate, like you were already in the love stage, 9 times out of 10, your girl is going to forgive you if you just talk it through. Like literally. And sometimes it's toxic because we shouldn't be forgiving for certain things. But if we just talk it through, if you were just even down to cheating, a lot of the women, and I know I've been there before, like, even when the truth is in your face and it hurts and it's like, how dare you, you're not ready to walk away because the love is still there, you know? So if you were to just be honest and talk it through, then you can actually use that example moving forward. So in the future, if something did come up, a man can say something like, well, if you remember, I was honest with you before and we talked about this. So, you know what I'm saying? I was honest. So why would I lie to you again if I've told you the truth before? And then it'll make women be like, oh yeah, you're right. So again, men have all the answers there. You just choose to make it harder for yourself. Not you. I'm just saying men in general.
I hear you.
Like,
no, I hear
you
what you're saying.
The answers are there.
So in response to the initial question too about why they do it, I mean, women do it as well. You know, I was in a relationship in the past too, where a woman just lied about insignificant stuff, and it exacerbated the fact that she was lying about more serious things. So when I saw the pattern of these little white lies, and not just to me, but to her brothers or, you know what I mean, family, I'm like, oh, you use that same excuse with me, but I know you're lying about that to them. So are you lying to me? What it does is it gets under the fabric, it gets into the foundation, it cracks the foundation of trust, which is extremely strong when it's right, but it's super fragile. The minute it's cracked, it's like, man, I don't know what to believe about this
Right.
person.
Yep.
Why do we do it? It could be a number of reasons. It was role modeled for us by our parents. We saw mom do it. We saw dad do it. Maybe we saw mom cheating dad cheating on mom, and dad said, hey, listen, keep this from mom. This is his dad's friend. We don't have to talk about this, whatever. And then you see these things occurring. Sometimes you lie because it's survival. Sometimes you had no other choice but to tell some lies. Sometimes the truth is real shameful. So they would rather not feel that shame and just say something that, again, the argument, maybe in the example, Carmen, for you, your boyfriend just didn't want to argue. Who knows how he feels about arguing? Who knows what his past experiences have been with arguing and yelling, and how much trauma that may be for him or for either of you. I know for me, I don't like to hear yelling, based on what I lived through. It brings me an extra level of stress. If there's a way for me to avoid an argument, I would rather choose that route. Now, I also don't want to lie about things, because I know down the line, I want to make sure you trust me. I want to make sure when I'm being serious, to take me serious as well, because that doesn't feel good either, right? If you're actually, the one time they decide to be honest and you don't believe them, and it's kind of their fault because they set it up with a bunch of lies prior to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And now we're in an argument because you're not believing me when I'm actually trying to be honest. You have to take accountability for that too, because if you're off and on, if again, this kind of thing of being honest and then the white lies, being honest and the white lies, that one time you want to be honest and they don't believe you, that's kind of on you,
Yeah. Taking
So
accountability. It's funny. I tell my kids that,
yeah,
like, my son, for instance, like, oh man, you're always like crying for the littlest things. When it's something real, I'm not going to believe you, because you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? You did this. Like, we tell our
yeah.
kids those things, like, don't lie, because then when it comes down to the truth, we're not going to believe you. It's the same thing
Mhm.
in relationships. It's like down to the basics.
Yeah.
If you show this pattern, we're not going to believe you when it's time to get serious.
hmm And again, then that kind of leads into this question about the trauma response. What is a trauma response? So it is that response to something that pushed a button in us, and we go to a 10 real quick without even realizing that it was going to mess with us. You know what I mean? And it's directly connected to somebody lying to us in the past. The underlying feeling that you may have, you or anybody else that's been cheated on, right? By the way, hand raised, I've been a victim of that as well. At some point, you're like, I don't know what to trust. I don't know what to believe. So if you see any little sign that's kind of similar to, or like, yeah, I've heard this excuse before, you're already going back to the trauma from the past, and it's kind of influencing your current interactions. That's a trauma response. I mean, and again,
Yeah.
there's different levels of that. It could be super, explosive, or it could just be like, I'm not feeling too good about that. I'll give you an example. When my wife now, because this is my second marriage, and when we were first dating and it was getting serious, she said, I love you first. And the first time I heard her say it, I actually got sad, right? And I had to be honest with her. I had to let her know straight up. I'm like, I got to be honest with you about something. I appreciate that you said that. And it feels like I just appreciate that you said that you wanted to tell me you love me. But I feel kind of sad hearing it, because the
Oh,
last two women that I was with also said they loved me, and they ended up
wow.
cheating on me and breaking my heart. And
Oof.
so just hearing I love you was really a reminder of the betrayal from the two women before you. I know that's
Wow.
not your fault. I know that I'm working through that,
Right.
but I just need you to know where I'm at. So if you don't get the response from me that you were hoping for, or that we expect to hear when we tell somebody I love you, this is what I'm working with right now. This is what I'm working through. Now, that was a trauma response, that
Wow.
sadness that I felt. We have that. It could be trust. It
Yeah.
could be like, I don't believe you. You're up to something.
Right.
I know this. It could be an underlying feeling of, I know at some point it's about to go bad. Something bad is about to happen.
Right. You're always on
That
edge.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And Carmen, you actually mentioned something too, I think, in your most recent episode too, of how, I don't know if you were just in the shower or you were just thinking, you just started crying. And you're
Yeah.
like, what is this? What's going on right now?
Yeah.
What was I thinking about that just caused this emotional state that I'm in right now, right? And so
Yeah.
whatever it is, it's the trauma that we have endured, it stays with us.
Mm-hmm.
The body keeps a score of the trauma that we've been through. It's actually a book called The Body Keeps a Score, right? But it's true. It can be a weight on us. A literal weight of stress
Really.
can be on our shoulders
Mhm.
because of the hard stuff we've been through in the past. So it's a very interesting, delicate road to travel, but there's so many things that we've even talked about in this conversation now that have the hints of trauma responses. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
think that's important that you mentioned that, because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like most people don't realize that they're giving that trauma response. They just feel
Mm-hmm.
they're acting accordingly, or they're acting, the right way, or they in their mind, as most of us, we do things because we feel like it's the right thing to do, or we're doing the
Yeah.
right thing, or we're protecting ourselves, when really we don't give ourselves the time or the therapy to really uncover those layers and be able to
Yeah.
see how we can handle it, or see how we can address it. Like, for instance, you knew and you were self-aware of your trauma that you've been through, so you knew how to respond and you knew how to explain it. Most men, and even women too, don't know how to elaborate. So if there's a lot of people that would say thank you after saying I love you, and then leave it at that, and then the girl's like, wait, what did I say? What did I do? Was I too quick? You know what I'm saying? But you knew that if you would have just said I appreciate that, and then left
Yeah.
it at that, it would make her believe like all these crazy things, like maybe you're not into her as much or whatever. So you knew you had to explain to her so that she could understand why you're not saying it back just yet.
Yep.
And also to let her know, I'm still on this journey with you. I'm just not on the same page just yet. Like
Right.
that goes a long way. And that's why with me, it's like, I love being an open book, because I want to be able to not rely on feeling like everyone is just mind readers. It's like, I want
Yeah.
to be able to show you like, hey, well, we've been through this before, or I've told you this before. And that's why I try to be the communicator, but it's harder when you don't have a partner who is that easily communicative, like that person can't, they've been holding in for so long, or like you
Right.
said, have dealt with things in the past that they're not comfortable with sharing things, even when it comes to their feelings or what they're thinking, or maybe their egos in the way, whatever it is, they're not everyone can communicate. And I feel like that's the problem with a lot of relationships, that one's a communicator and one isn't. And sometimes you get people that are together that both can't communicate, and that's even harder, because I mean, how else are we supposed to understand each other without being able to
Yeah.
verbally tell each other how we're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lena? Oh, I
Well,
didn't know if you
first,
were going to say something. I didn't want to jump in.
well, no, I do want to say first off, I think it's amazing that you do share your journey as well with,
Yeah.
your past, because I think a lot of people assume, which if I didn't know you, I wouldn't, know this about you. But the fact that like now, I see you happily married, having your family, and I think it's a beautiful thing. And we don't think about what a person has gone through prior to that. So,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I say, like, when you see me with everything that I deserve, just know, like, I've gone through some stuff to be able to like get there, so
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say, like, I'm so happy for you that you did find that happy ending, but most importantly, that you dealt with yourself first before being able to find that. And I think that
Yeah.
that's where I'm at now in my journey. I finally was able to admit that I've been the issue in, some of my relationships. So now I'm able to address those things. And like you, now I'm starting to see certain things where I can say, yeah, see, this is why, this is not going to work for me, or this is
Mm-hmm.
why, I'm this way. I'm a very, I react so fast sometimes that I surprise myself sometimes. I'm like, girl, you didn't have to say that. You didn't have to cut that deep,
Mm.
so I have to check myself where I
Yeah.
tell myself, learn how to respond. And even if you have to take some time to know what your response is going to be, it's better than
Yeah.
reacting in a certain way. And one of the gems that your last guest dropped, he said that he made a lot of bad decisions based on emotions. And that right there made me go, whoa, that's been my whole life. You know, I've made a lot of mistakes based on love. It was, I love this person. I love this person. They love me, you know, thinking, especially growing up, seeing like a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
You know, my parents are still together after 45 years, but they fight every day. And that is not what I want for my life. You know, I was in that marriage. That was my marriage every single day. We fought about something. So whether it was the milk, you know, going bad, whether it was, you know, another woman texting him, you know, there was always something to fight about. And I'm glad that I was able to finally get out of that. And while like my mom is sad to see me, you know, not be in my marriage and not be with somebody, I tell her all the time, Mom, I made the right decision. There is not one ounce in my heart that feels that I didn't do the right thing, and I fought for it. I did everything I could. And I know that you can relate to that because you were in a very similar situation where you fight for something that you really love. And then one thing that I'm learning now is, hey, sometimes you do have to take the L, you know, but the L doesn't have to be a loss. It can be a very valuable lesson. And, you know, changing perspective, changing the narrative is something I really am working on, because I was always, I got played, I got my heart broken. Now I'm like, nah, I needed to go through that to learn some stuff. And so there's this saying that I use, no mud, no lotus. I have a lotus tattooed on my finger. And it's this constant reminder that we're always blooming, we're always growing. But the only way for a lotus flower to bloom is, you know, through the mud. And so I've realized that no matter what I've gone through in my life, it's brought me to this point in my life where I can just bloom and, you know, be happy about the things that I've gone through. So, you know, we've all gone through very similar situations where we gave our whole heart to somebody and we ended up getting played. But the narrative that I've changed on that is I have been able to love at the fullest capacity, and I'm proud of myself for that.
Yeah. Love it. That's beautiful. Now we're having some beautiful moments right now, honestly. Lena, one of the questions that you had too was, how does divorce shape our view on love? And we touched on it a little bit. And you know, I can give my personal some of the lessons that I learned, some of the experiences that I had through going through my divorce. 2010 was the absolute toughest year of my life. Leading, honestly, 2010 into 2011. 2010 is when my wife left, and my first wife, and I've never even talked about it publicly much at all. You know, I was very mindful about even protecting her, you know, but you know, divorce makes you question whether love is even possible, right? You question if, like, can I even do this? Am I even capable of finding the right relationship or the right person? And that was probably one of the most immediate hits that I took was, man, I don't know if I'm good at this, right? And first wife was a Black woman. I remember one of the initial responses was, I'm never going to be with another Black woman ever, ever. And my girlfriends, you know, Black women were like, Dave, please don't say that. Please don't say that. I'm like, look, I'm done. I'm done with all y'all, right? Bam, done. Second wife is a Black woman. So that, you know, we see how that worked out.
It was a trauma response.
Listen, exactly. And so this is what I'm saying is, and you know, what effects did the divorce have on you with your view of love?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Of you. Yeah.
So for a long time, I was like, I don't know if I want marriage again. You know, I don't know if it's worth it. I still, to be honest, I'm still on the fence about it sometimes. But I will say that, and I say this to everybody, I don't wish divorce on my worst enemy. It is by far the worst experience that I've had. It was the hardest. I remember being in bed for days. Like I barely would even get up and go to the restroom. I didn't even eat. I remember it just felt like, you know, you put so much into this marriage. And then, you know, in my situation, there was a kid that, you know, was brought about. And then crazy enough, so we got a divorce in 2011. And we ended up trying to make it work again. And this time I was accepting, you know, his son. Right. Now we're going to therapy at this point. This is in 2012.
Yeah.
And he gets another girl pregnant while we're in therapy. So at this point, it's like, oh no, I can't do this
Crazy.
again. Because that's why when we were talking about the last episode, when Carmen says, can you imagine what Lala's going through? I'm like, yes, I know exactly what she's going through. And that was my response. I was like, yes, I know what she's going through, because it almost made my heart race at the thought of like, gosh, she's going through this again. And this time it's with twins. Like this time it's a lot worse than the first time. And this is what I mean about going back to an ex. So it ends the same way, if not worse. And that's what happened in my situation. So obviously at that point, finally left him, finally. And one of the things that really got to me was my daughter was 6 years old at the time. She heard me and her dad fighting. And as I'm taking her to school, she's seeing me crying. And she says, what's wrong, mommy? And I was like, nothing. And she said, did daddy cheat on you again? And at that point, I was like, I can't put my daughter through this. Like, I don't want her thinking that this is what love is. And honestly, that's what encouraged me to finally leave the situation. But like my homegirl, J-Lo, I went and jumped into another situation right away. I didn't give it a break. Trust me, my kitty was like, ain't no breath taken here. We're going on to the next. Okay. So
and that's because he was enjoying himself while you were still trying. So you were more reacting from anger. You know what I'm saying? You were more like, man, I was so loyal when you were having your fun. It's time for mama to have some fun. That's really how
I was
happened.
having some fun. Okay. So I went and got into another situation right away. I was with that guy for like 2.5 years. And when me and him broke up, that was the first time from the time I was 15, because before I met my daughter's dad, I was in a relationship in high school for 2 years. So from the time I was 15 until the time I was 30, I had never been alone. I didn't know what it was like to be single. So, finally, I'm living in LA and I'm like, I'm about to go out. I'm going to start, having a good time. And honestly, I hated being single. I was like, nope, I want a man. I want to be with a man. And until the pandemic hit. And so keep in mind, this was like last year. Okay. So this is new knowledge. All right, guys. So and I have the gray hairs to prove it. So this wisdom coming in is fresh, but it really made me realize how much happier I am alone. Like I don't have to, I don't have to be worrying about somebody else checking their phone, worrying about what they're doing. And, it's just this peace that I found within myself that it took all of, my broken relationships, all this, trauma that I had put on myself through through the divorce, through the other relationship, through the other situationships. And, it really made me realize how important it is that you find wholeness before you find a partner. We're so quick to want to be with somebody, but then we bring all this back. I was Erykah Badu. I was bringing all my bags with me. I was a bag lady. Yes.
You go hurt your bag.
Yes. So we know that, carrying all that baggage carries so much weight on you. So just imagine, listen, I got guys right now that got a ring for me. Okay. They're ready. But I'm now at this point in my life, like I said, I'm not sure if marriage is for me, but if I do decide, just know that that's the right man, that God not only was like, hey, God was like, hey, tonta, like that's him right there. That's what I prayed on. I told God, you know what? Make sure that my husband doesn't just try once. I need him to try a few times for me to be like, okay, this is the one,
Yeah.
But divorce is definitely, something that'll shape you for the rest of your life. And if you don't do the right therapy or the right soul seeking, or, just do whatever you need to do to heal, you're going to pass on that pain from one person to the next. One of the books that I read that really changed my life, it's called The Mastery of Love. And he talks about, he's a Mexican author. And he talks about how, we pass on this poison. So, if you're hurt and you get into another situation, you're going to pass on that poison. And then that person is going to pass on the poison to the next person. So if I can be an example of love to somebody, and I will say this in my experiences, none of my exes can say that I broke their heart and I just completely, hurt them in a way where they're not gonna know. I showed up and I showed them how to love, and I'm very confident in that. And in the process, there's the saying,
Yeah.
like in certain situations, like the woman comes into the situation, she shows them how to love, and then the man shows her how to self-love. And that is so true in my situation.
Powerful.
Yeah. So I
Love it.
definitely have learned through my experiences like self-love, but you know, we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe next year y'all might see me like, I got a ring,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
but we'll see.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Carmen, did you have anything to add?
You know, I've never been married, but I can say that, you know, when Angie says like, oh, you know, I feel like this is a space where I'm finding myself and I'm okay with being alone. And it's
Mhm.
crazy, as a friend that's been in a relationship for so long, and I've seen her like fall through the cracks many times and repeat the same cycles. I can see the growth, you know, after every
Yeah.
situation. And I would always tell her, like, don't be hard on yourself. Everyone fucks up. You could be in a whole relationship, me, and have, you know, messed up problems or have issues or have, you know, not the best relationship. And it's one thing to just learn from the progress. Like with me, I can say that honestly, the one thing that's helped me is not, I wish I would have taken on therapy, but what's helped me is I feel like I'm such a people pleaser that I like making people feel good, even when like I know that they're in the wrong. And I think the way I've handled things, even getting out of my domestic violence situation, I've had
Wow.
to push myself, even when I didn't feel comfortable or I didn't
Yeah.
feel confident in myself. I had to fake it till I made it. You know, when I got
Mhm.
out of my situation, which I didn't even think, like when as I was actually packing up my stuff, I'm like, am I actually doing this? Am I actually doing this? Knowing that I was in the wrong, you know, I mean, I was in a wrong situation, and knowing that he was a monster, and knowing that if I stayed, I could have possibly died at some point, or he would have killed me, or it would have just been bad. Even knowing those things, it was still hard for me to let go. So I didn't want people to know everything that happened in my relationship because I was ashamed, I was embarrassed. And so with me, I feel like my domestic violence situation, specifically with the last one I was in, because I was in two different relationships that dealt with domestic physically and mentally, or abuse physically and mentally. And I feel like what's helped me was just faking it till I made it, honestly.
Mm,
And even I feel like I carry that on with my relationship now.
yeah.
To the one thing I feel that has saved me is that I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong, or I'm not afraid to admit when I'm getting called out on something I
Mhm.
did, and just be like, all right, that was my bad.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when you address that, then the fight can't continue. He can't just be like, I told you this. And not that much, because that's the one thing I love about him. He is not a yeller. He's not a crazy dude. And I think that's why we lasted so long, because I was that yeller. I was that like crazy girl. And I told Angie before, he taught me how to not be that. You know, he taught me how
Mhm.
to, I still remember our first fight when I started getting loud. The first thing he said was, whoa, like, why are you yelling? And then I was like, you're right. Why am I yelling? And it wasn't until like, I was like, you know what? After the fight, after I got done yelling, because I was like, I'm yelling because I feel like it, blah, blah, blah. And then after that, I was like, after I came down, I probably had a Snickers or something. I was like, you know what? I was tripping. I was just a little hungry. No, I really felt like I had to look back at myself and be like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
apologize. I went to him and I was like, listen, I apologize because you're right. Like, you've never yelled at me. You never raised your voice. And it took for you to like point that out for me to be like, damn, I'm really just bringing um, this toxic vibe that I used to have in my relationship onto you, when really you don't deserve that. Granted, you know, you fucked up. We had this discussion, this argument that was led by you, but you
Mhm.
never disrespected me. You never yelled at me. And so when he acknowledged that, and mind you, this is someone who's not a communicator, but when he told me that, it made me realize like, oh, like I do need to change some things. Cause even though my ex was so wrong, I didn't know that I had some wrongs in me. And so when I, you know, started having the relationships with my current man, and we would talk about like things that we didn't want to do, that was one that I was like, man, I learned how to have an argument without yelling. And that to me taught me a lot. So I think divorces is a whole nother beast, but like going through breakups are also very familiar because it is hard. Like when Angie describes her divorce and her not being able to get out of bed and not being able to eat, I feel like there's so many women have felt that in without being married, being in a relationship with someone for so long, or common law marriage, you've been with someone for so long, then live with someone for so long. When it's time to cut ties, you really feel like your world's falling apart. And I feel like a lot of the times, and this is from my personal experience, is because you're also afraid. You take on so much more because you're also afraid of what people are going to say about you. And I know with me, that's what it was. A lot of the times it was more so like, oh my gosh, like, what is my mom going to say? That's why nobody knew about my abuse until after, because I didn't want my parents to think anything. And I think I took so long to leave that because I knew once I left it, I would have to explain to my friends, my closest friends, my family, what I was enduring. And I hated that. I hate confrontation to this day. I hate it. But in my relationship, I had to learn how to, confront my man in certain things, and vice versa. I had to teach him, like, listen, I'm like you. I don't like confrontation, but I also am an open book. So I'm gonna need you to give me that same energy, And so it's trial and error. We learned a lot. And again, I've been with him for 9 years, not married, but we have been through a lot. And I love that Angie is finding peace in like being single. But while in a relationship, and I know sometimes Angie had been like, I'm tired of like dating these men. I just wish I could, settle down. I'm like, it's not always green on the other side either. It's like both. It really depends on how you take it or how you learn from it.
Yeah.
And that's with every situation. And so although I didn't or haven't dealt with divorce, I know what that pain is like, to feel like the life is sucked out of you.
Yeah.
And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves because we don't want people to judge us. So that's one thing I constantly try to tell myself, like, fuck what everyone else thinks. What am I feeling? And what are my kids seeing? And what example am I leading for my kids? And that's why I tell Angie too. I'm like, girl, we're learning in this together,
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, yes, our lives are on the line and we're telling people like our business, but it's what makes us happy. So that's why I think we found comfort in being able to tell our stories or our journey or our experiences, because we want people not to make the same mistakes, like, hey, red flags.
Right. I guess the good thing about, Carmen, like she can share her stories about, her man, and people, are quick to judge or count. They'll be like, okay, Carmen she's only dealing with one D. Okay. Angie, we've heard about this D and that D and that D, so we get judged sometimes by the things that we open up about. But I'm just like, I don't care. Y'all can count all of them. There's a plethora of them, but just know I have learned a lesson.
We're learning.
Through each experience. So I'm not ashamed about opening up about my situations, because it allows me to, honestly, speaking about it helps me heal. So, when I go back, I've actually heard some of our old episodes, and I'm like, whoo, I don't even know that girl. I don't even know that girl no more.
Who is that girl? Yeah. Or when you listen back, right? Or when you listen back and you're like you almost cringe a little bit, because I know I've told some stories where I'm just like, ooh. But also I think it's very important that this, and I feel like your listeners too, because I know we talk about this on our podcast a lot, but that I'm not just talking about my man like he's just not human and fuck what he says or what he thinks. He's also very well aware of what I do for a living. He's also aware of the fact that I'm going to tell my story like it is. And we've had those conversations like, hey, just so you know, this is going to happen. We're going to discuss this. Or sometimes it's after, like, hey, just so you know, this is what's happening. But we've gotten to the point, again, 9 years in, we've gotten to the point where he knows it would never be anything disrespectful. It's all truth, and I will never lie on him, but I will also never like belittle him. It's just, we've learned from our mistakes. And just as much as I've, called him out on certain things that he's done on my podcast, and, kind of, it sounded like I would shit on him. I've shit on myself before too, and so that's why I think he's been able to.
You spread it evenly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we all getting some, but I think at the end of the day is like, as long as he feels I'm not disrespecting him, I don't care what anyone else has to say about my relationship or, or why I'm still in it or why, whatever. At the end of the day, as long as my partner feels that, I've give him the respect first. That's all that matters to me. And that's like Angie says, like, oh, all these men can count all the dudes I've been with, but guess what? It's never stopped her from getting a new one is all I'm saying.
Okay. They're all in my DMs right now.
like you said, there's how many men that are ready with rings in the box, ready to go when you're ready to go, right?
When I'm ready, yeah. But
I got you. This conversation has been great. We have several questions that we haven't even gotten to, and then I know that for part 2 of this conversation, you're even going to kind of throw it out to your listeners, whatever questions they may have. Some of the stuff we haven't talked about that we're going to talk about is toxic relationships, right? And why we find ourselves going back to toxic relationships, staying in them longer than we should have, or, depression and going to therapy or not, is depression curable? Why are we people pleasers and things like that? So many amazing topics that are they're just juicy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for the sake of time, we'll pause it now and keep them wanting more for episode 2. I want to close on one thought that I had, a lesson that I learned coming out of my first marriage and where I am now. But then also there's something I like to do in this podcast as well, where I give you a word and I just like to hear how it resonates with you. Okay. So the I think one of the biggest lessons I learned coming out of my first marriage, and as I was healing and learning more about myself, I realized that we should never have to beg or fight for anybody to love us.
Say that for the people in the back.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I literally just said that to somebody. I will not beg for you to love me.
Yeah.
And I was
if
like,
I'm putting more work in this than you are, just to get some love back, to get it reciprocated, this is not real love, and this is not a healthy love. And I need to love myself enough to know it's time to walk away.
Yes.
Right. Woo, I love it. I literally was just here, so proud of y'all too for just going in. This is exactly what I was hoping that we would get. Just raw, vulnerable conversation and, a bunch of laughs. I knew that this was going to happen. So I'm going to give you a word, and I would love to hear from each of you how this word resonates with you. Okay. So the word is push. Lena, you go first. How does the word push resonate with you?
Push. First off, I didn't acknowledge this earlier, but shout out to the Padres because they've been kicking the Dodgers' ass.
I appreciate that.
Say that because I already know. I'm a Dodgers fan, but seeing how good they've been playing, I'm like, you know what? I might need to get a job with them to get some tickets.
Yeah, I hope you do.
But yes, so push. So
push
for me means pushing through everything that life throws at you. Life is going to challenge you in every way. And, for some people, having, I use this hashtag a lot. It's called winner's mindset. So winner's mindset to me, it really comes from sports. It comes from growing up playing sports. And even now I've picked up tennis, and it challenges me, not just physically, but mentally as well. And it makes me be like, okay, I need to get out there. I need to push myself. So push to me means just challenging yourself and pushing through everything.
Love it.
It's funny because as soon as you said it, I really thought the same thing with pushing through, because it's literally the littlest things, right? For instance, I have been in radio my whole life, damn near feels like my whole adult life, right? And there was times where I was dealing with so much, right? So much like literally the mics would come off and I would go and cry, like literally. And by the way, I had 2 co-hosts with me that saw that side of me, and so there'd be times where like I couldn't wait to get in my car to go cry home on the way home. Like I looked forward to that, right? And I feel with pushing through is like something that I've always had to like deal with. And so I always say like somehow I end up getting out of situations. So no matter what, I'm going to push through. No matter what, I'm going to push through. And I always tell myself with everything, like for instance, this is like hella off. I didn't want to bring this up, but like
we're going there.
I'm going there just to prove a point. I had an ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant before having this this meeting, right? I hadn't eaten all day. I'm like, damn it, I'm craving this. I'm just going to have my lactose pills. Bro, when I tell you, as soon as the mic started to start this conversation, like my stomach has been in pain the whole time. And guess what? I don't push through. Because I have like really, really bad, like I'm allergic to milk. So it's
I witnessed it.
And it's so painful. Like, it's not like, I just, I'm gassy. Like, it's painful. So throughout this whole conversation that we've had, I have been in pain. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say it. But that's really what it is. I find a way to push through regardless, because I always feel like if I just, even when I'm not confident or comfortable, if I just push through, I will feel good about accomplishing something. And in this case, it's the podcast, the episode with you. We've been wanting to do this, for a while. And for me to say, hey, you know what? I've been in pain. Forget it. I'm not going to do it. Like, I would not feel good about myself. Just like I don't like calling in for work, things like that. So for me, that's how it resonates with me. It's like pushing through whatever it is. Even during the times where I'm going through like the hardest, the hardest, like a breakup, or I've just been betrayed, or a friend of mine let me down. Even through those moments, I always, at the very moment that I'm hurting, like I said, even when I'm crying, I'm looking myself in the mirror, I'm like, you can push through. Like, you end up getting out of it, and like you end up pushing through no matter what. So that's why I feel that when I first heard the word push, it's like a positive thing for me. It's like just getting through to the end results, and whatever it is, I'm going to be able to accomplish it, or succeed in whatever it is, because at the end of the day, even if I drop the ball, I'm going to end up picking myself up and doing it again, or picking myself up and learning from it. Regardless, I'm going to end up pushing through. And I think one thing, even though I have a lot of good friends around me and family, I don't like to put that like negative energy on people, or I don't like people to have to carry my weight. So I handle it myself, and I end up pushing through myself. And that's one of the things that I feel like I feel accomplished when I do that. In any case, even through this podcast and going through with this damn stomach pain, like push through, baby.
Pushing through the pain so you can push after the episode's over.
that part. Oh, it's so bad.
I love it. Lena and Carmen, I'm so honored. This has been an amazing first episode. I'm looking forward to, reconnecting with y'all for part 2 of this on your podcast, the Ladies Lounge podcast. Please, everyone, go show them some love on their podcast. You will not be disappointed. Oh, this has been so much fun, and I've learned so much, and I'm ready for the next episode, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, because I don't think it's just me. I feel like Angie feels the same way. Like, this was very therapeutic. Like, hearing your, struggles and the things that you have been through, and also sharing your experiences, and us being able to talk about what we've been through. It's the way you articulate certain questions, like the way you bring about certain topics, is like very therapeutic, because it helps us understand. Like, you don't just throw a question, you throw a question and then you explain what that question means. That's very helpful for, I feel like, anyone that's going to be on your show. I feel like most people aren't used to being on the hot seat, and with therapy, that's always kind of been my fear, that if I go to therapy, it's going to be like, I don't want to uncover these layers, but when you have someone like you that presents a question and then explains what way to go, it makes it easy for us to be able to talk about certain things. So thank you. I enjoyed this whole session, really.
Thank you, Carmen. I appreciate that. And from a therapist to you, Carmen, you're absolutely ready for therapy. You're ready to open up and you're ready to talk. I'm telling you right now, you're going to benefit so much from it. You'll probably cry, and you'll probably the waterfalls will flood, and it's all good, because you probably just need that, but you're ready. Yeah. You're ready to unpack the layers. I'm telling you. Bless you, ladies, so much. This is going to be good. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Y'all are so dope.